Welcome. Today we're getting into one of the most uh, complex and culturally significant characters in animation history.
And that's saying something.
It really is. We're talking about a figure who, on the surface, seems pretty simple. A wisecracking rabbit who eats carrots. But his origin story, it involves at least half a dozen different creators and years of pretty radical design shifts.
We are, of course, talking about Bugs Bunny.
The ultimate trickster.
That's right. And for those of you who shared the source material for this analysis, you've given us just an incredible historical blueprint of this character's journey.
Really is extensive.
It stretches back over 80 years. We can see everything from his earliest, almost crude prototypes all the way to his modern animated life. So our goal today is to really isolate the key insights about his unconventional development.
And to analyze the core elements of his personality.
Exactly, and contextualize why his massive cultural influence has not only lasted, but has, only grown over time.
So before we jump all the way back to the kind of chaotic world of 1930s animation, let's just establish the fundamental character we're analyzing.
The baseline Bugs.
The baseline Bugs.
Yeah.
At his heart, he's that anthropomorphic gray and white rabbit, instantly recognizable by his flippant, almost arrogant personality.
That insouciance, as the sources call it.
Yes, and that very specific combination of Bronx and Brooklyn accents that Mel Blanc just perfected.
Yeah.
And of course, the catchphrase that defines him.
Hey. What's up, dog?
He is the master manipulator, the trickster who never, ever loses his cool, whether he's facing down a hapless foe like Elmer Fudd or
the tiny, aggressive tyrant Yosemite Sam.
Right.
What stands out immediately, and what the sources really stress, is that Bugs Bunny is a triumph of collective creation. He's not like, say, Mickey Mouse.
It was very much a singular vision.
Sprung almost whole from Walt Disney's specific vision, yes. The sources emphasize that Bugs was, and I'm quoting here, not the creation of any one man. He was an emergent property.
Okay, let's unpack that. That idea of collective creation. Because it immediately explains why the character was so changeable in those first few years.
It does.
So if he wasn't conceived by a single person, how did he even take shape?
He was the product of what the sources call the creative talents of perhaps 5 or 6 directors and many cartoon writers. If you think about the Warner Bros. Animation Unit.
Termite Terrace.
Right, which was their nickname for their kind of rundown studio building. It was a very dynamic, collaborative place. The sources suggest that ideas and gags were often pitched in these joint story conferences.
So a brainstorming session, essentially.
Basically. And if a gag worked for some generic character, they used it. If it was popular, that character was brought back, and each director or writer who touched it next would add a new element to the mix.
So instead of following a strict character Bible, they were almost crowdsourcing a superstar, one cartoon short at a time.
That's a perfect way to put it.
Which brings us to the very beginning, the preliminary debut in Porky's Hare Hunt.
Exactly. That debut came on April 30th, 1938. And the rabbit, he was unnamed. And he was completely white.
And this was co-directed by Ben Bugs Hardaway.
A key figure.
And Cal Dalton. And Hardaway's nickname is important here, isn't it?
It's critical because that's what later inspired the character's name. Dalton, meanwhile, was responsible for that initial, very rudimentary design.
What's so fascinating is how closely this first cartoon mirrored a previous hit. It shows the studio was already working on a formula.
They absolutely were. The plot of Porky's Hare Hunt is, it's basically a direct copy of Tex Avery's Porky's Duck Hunt from 1937.
Which was the introduction of Daffy Duck.
Right. In both cartoons, Porky Pig, who was the studio's early star, is the frustrated hunter. And he's pursuing this silly, hyper-energetic prey whose goal isn't just to escape.
It's psychological warfare.
Yes. The goal is to drive the hunter completely mad. As the sources point out, they essentially just dressed the duck in a rabbit suit.
So what did that first rabbit look and sound like? Was he anything like Bugs Bunny?
Visually, he was described as a rural buffoon. He had this oval head, a really shapeless body. None of the sleekness we associate with Bugs now.
And the voice.
The voice Mel Blanc gave him was loud, manic, a classic zany cartoon voice. And it was topped off with this goofy kind of guttural laugh.
I've heard it. It sounds much more like another famous character.
It's far, far closer to the voice Blanc later used for Woody Woodpecker than it is to the cool, collected Bugs. But this prototype, it resonated with audiences enough for the Termite Terrace staff to decide to use the rabbit again.
Okay, so the first version gave us the energy, but not the attitude.
Not at all.
This is where the different directors start to refine the personality just a year later. The second appearance, which was Chuck Jones's Presto Changeo in 1939, it shifts the entire demeanor.
It really does.
Yeah.
This short shows the staff actively trying on different personas for this rabbit character. Here, he's the pet of Shampoo the magician.
And his role is to torment two dogs that have broken into the house.
Right. But his behavior is radically different from the first short. This version was described as cool, graceful, and controlled. He was almost silent, using cunning and stage magic tricks instead of just sheer zany energy to confuse his enemies.
So he kept one thing from the first appearance.
Only one thing: that guttural laugh. This marks the character's first crucial pivot. He's transitioning from a loud buffoon to a controlled, almost aristocratic trickster.
This really suggests that their collective brainstorming process was working. They must have realized that the zany energy was Daffy Duck's thing.
Exactly. That territory was already taken. They needed something cooler for the rabbit.
And the third appearance, Hair Scare, which was directed by Dalton and Hardaway again later in 1939, it takes that personality pivot and then adds some critical visual elements.
This is a big one.
Visually, this is where we start seeing the gray rabbit, correct?
Yes. For the very first time, the rabbit is depicted as gray. And that immediately differentiates him visually from his all-white debut and, the general white rabbit trope.
It also gave him his first singing role.
It did. But most importantly, this is the short that accidentally cemented his name.
The naming origin is just a great piece of animation lore. It really speaks to how informal the studio was at the time.
It truly does. So Charlie Thorson, who is the lead animator on Harem Scare, he was tasked with drawing up a definitive model sheet for Hardaway's team to follow.
A guide for all the other animators.
Right. When he finished the sheet, he wrote Bugs Bunny on it. He clearly meant it as Hardaway's rabbit, since Hardaway's nickname was Bugs.
It was possessive.
It was a possessive noun. However, the promotional department either misunderstood or just appropriated the label, and it was quickly changed to Bugs Bunny, as in the rabbit's own proper name. It went from a label of ownership to a permanent identifier.
The sources also address this alternative name that pops up, Happy Rabbit. Mel Blanc himself promoted this idea for a long time.
He did, but animation historians suggest a more nuanced story. Mel Blanc claimed in his autobiography that Happy Rabbit was a proposed name for the character.
But that's probably not true.
Well, the historian David Gerstein argues pretty strongly against this. He says Happy was just another reference to the director, Hardaway, who was sometimes called Happy Hardaway by his colleagues.
And there's evidence for this.
Yes. Gerstein points to things like a newspaper headline that you can see inside the cartoon Harem Scare, which references the director. Plus, the name Bugs Bunny was already being used in official publicity and reviews by August 1939. That's long before the character's final design was even set.
So Happy Rabbit was probably more of a nickname for the project, not the character.
It suggests it was a ghost name, something generated by later recollection, not a real studio contender.
Let's focus more on Thorson's design influence, because the sources suggest his attempt to fix the rabbit's look resulted in a kind of visual awkward merger of styles.
Thorson was deeply steeped in the Disney aesthetic. He'd worked on characters like Max Hare for the Disney short Toby Tortoise Returns. Right. So when he designed Bugs, he produced what was called a comic rendition of the stereotypical fuzzy bunny. This was characterized by a pear-shaped body, a noticeably protruding rear, large expressive eyes, and an exaggerated long neck.
And he gave him the gloves.
Crucially, yes, he gave the rabbit 3-fingered gloved hands and oversized feet.
That sounds like a very clear attempt to make him cuter, more in line with Disney's whole approach to character design at that time.
Absolutely. The sources specifically note this was a nod to Disney's tendency to draw animals as cute infants. But the core problem was that Thorson was trying to merge this soft, rounded, Disney-esque cuteness with the lean, streamlined, kinetic style needed for Warner Bros. Slapstick.
And the result was that awkward merger.
Exactly. A character who's trying to be both the soft bunny from a Disney cartoon and the fast-talking, cool Max Hare, but didn't quite succeed at being either.
So we have 3 distinct rabbits so far.
Yeah.
The loud buffoon, the silent magician, and this gray, pear-shaped singer. The final prototype stage introduces his defining adversary, which leads us directly into the official debut.
That final prototype was in Chuck Jones' Elmer's Candid Camera in 1940. Visually, the rabbit had evolved even further. He was taller, his face was getting much closer to the modern form.
But the voice was still off.
He still had that primitive, goofy voice from his very first appearance. This short established the dynamic rabbit meets hunter, but neither character was really fully formed yet.
Right. Elmer Fudd looked different, too.
Much different. He was taller and chubbier than the iconic round design we know, though Arthur Q. Bryan's distinctive voice to the character was already there. So this short really set the stage, but that simultaneous solidification of voice and design, that perfect character equation, was still a few months away.
It's amazing how much creative energy went into just those first 2 years just to find the right combination.
It really is a testament to that collaborative process.
That initial rough prototype set the stage. But it wasn't until 1930 that all that collective energy finally locked in the character we recognize. Let's transition now into that moment of definition, what the sources widely consider Part 2, the official debut and defining traits.
The solidification moment is A Wild Hare. It premiered on July 27, 1940, directed by the great Tex Avery. This is the official baseline.
And why this one?
Because it finalized all the major components at the same time. The visual design, the vocal characterization, and the essential personality structure. Everything just clicked.
And the key to that visual definition was a new artist,
Yeah.
Bob Givens, who was tasked with solving the aesthetic problem that Thorson's awkward merger had left behind.
Givens came in and he redesigned both Bugs and Elmer Fudd. His rabbit design was crucial. He streamlined Bugs, making his body more elongated so he could stand fully erect and poised.
So less like a cute infant.
Right. If Thorson's design looked like an infant, all soft curves and round shapes, Givens' version looked like an adolescent, lean and capable of action. This was the final step in that visual transformation from a rural buffoon to the sleek, self-assured city slicker.
And the auditory side of things locked in at the same time with that visual shift. Mel Blanc finally landed on the voice we all know.
Absolutely. A Wild Hare was the first time Blanc used that standardized voice, that specific blend of Bronx and Brooklyn accents. This vocal choice perfectly matched the new sharp-edged visual design, creating the character's core persona: audacious, quick-witted, and supremely cool.
And Avery's direction to him was pretty specific, wasn't it?
Interestingly, yes. Avery claimed his initial instruction to Blanc wasn't for a generic New York accent, but specifically a voice like the actor Frank McHugh, who was a fast-talking character actor popular in 1930s films. But regardless of the specific inspiration, the resulting sound was just perfect.
And the very first line he delivers in this newly defined form is the one that follows him through his entire history.
Yeah, what's up, Doc?
It's the simplest and yet most iconic catchphrase in animation history.
It is. And Tex Avery, who wrote the line, famously attached no special significance to it at all. He noted that it was just a very common expression in his native Texas, where doc was used just like you'd use pal or mate or dude today.
It was meant to be completely casual.
The ultimate casualness, yes.
But the sources stressed that it was Chuck Jones, one of the other great Bugs Bunny directors, who really elevated that phrase into a philosophical statement about the character's entire outlook on life.
Jones's analysis is so key to understanding Bugs's genius. He explained that the phrase is funny precisely because it is, and I quote, a perfectly legitimate question in a perfectly illogical situation.
He used an analogy for this, didn't he?
He did. Jones said that the rabbit is never the straight man. He's the instigator of the chaos. But he pretends he's just an innocent bystander observing it with perfect nonchalance.
Can you elaborate on that? The nonchalance versus the chaos.
Sure. Imagine you come home, you open your front door, and there's a man drilling a hole in your living room floor while also shooting a rifle at your chandelier. A normal person would scream or run or call the police. But Bugs Bunny, he would walk right up, tap the gunman on the shoulder, and ask, "Hey, what's up, Doc?" That complete refusal to acknowledge the surrounding danger, that absolute self-assurance that he controls the narrative, that's what makes the line successful. It's an act of psychological defiance that immediately throws the antagonist, in this case Elmer Fudd, completely off balance.
That coolness is then visually reinforced by his other signature behavior, the constant chewing of the carrot. And this detail, unlike the voice, is directly attributable to a classic piece of Hollywood cinema.
That's a wonderful piece of cross-media history. Friz Freleng, Chuck Jones, and Bob Clampett all confirmed the inspiration came from the 1934 Frank Capra film, It Happened One Night.
The Clark Gable scene.
The famous scene where Clark Gable's character, Peter Warren, leans against a fence and just nonchalantly eats a raw carrot while talking to Claudette Colbert. That gesture, eating a vegetable with flippant disregard for his surroundings, it perfectly captured the attitude they wanted for Bugs.
And it wasn't just the carrot eating. The sources note there were other potential Subtle influences from that same film.
Yes. The film is just ripe with coincidences that may have influenced the Warner team. Not only did Gable's character chew a carrot, but he also addressed someone else as Doc and even mentioned an imaginary person named Bugs Dooley.
Wow.
So you have three separate elements that eventually coalesced into Bugs Bunny's character framework.
Now, for the crucial insider detail that animation fans always debate, the logistics of Mel Blanc chewing the carrot and delivering his lines. How did he actually manage that without muffling the dialogue?
Blanc himself clarified this logistical challenge. He confessed that actually swallowing the carrot bits was impossible if he needed to immediately deliver a line. The crunching and chewing would just interrupt the dialogue flow.
So they tried substitutes.
They tried things like celery, but nothing provided that distinctive, sharp crunch of a real carrot. So the solution was pure expedience. Blanc would munch the carrot to create the sound effect, and then he'd immediately spit the chewed pieces into a spittoon.
Allowing him to jump right back into the next line.
Exactly.
And this clarification also helps put a permanent end to a long-running piece of misinformation about Blanc's health.
Precisely. There was this often repeated rumor, dating all the way back to the 1940s, that Blanc had to spit the carrot out because he was allergic to it.
But he wasn't.
No. Blanc emphatically denied this in a 1984 interview, and it's notably absent from his own autobiography. It was a technical necessity for expedience, not a medical one.
The character was clearly successful right out of the gate, and that was validated by immediate industry recognition for a wild hair.
It was an immediate box office smash, and it earned an Academy Award nomination for Best Cartoon Short Subject.
And he got another one the next year.
Bugs secured a second nomination the following year for Friz Freleng's Hiawatha's Rabbit Hunt in 1941. This early, significant recognition solidified his status as a star, and it even led to a memorable self-referential joke.
Ah, the moment where Bugs addresses his own awards snub.
Exactly. The fact that he lost that second Oscar nomination was so noteworthy that the studio spoofs it in the 1944 short What's Cookin' Doc. Bugs, in full metaform, interrupts the proceedings to demand a recount, claiming he was a victim of sabotage.
And he shows a clip to prove his point.
He does. He presents a clip from the nominated short to the audience, a cartoon within a cartoon, to prove he deserved the award. That level of breaking the fourth wall and self-aware campaigning shows how quickly the character understood his own position within the animated world.
That self-awareness is so key. It signals that Bugs was always more than just a funny animal. He was a personality with an ego, fully aware of his own fame.
And that rise to stardom brings us squarely into the most critical period of his history, Part 3, the Golden Age, which was significantly shaped by the demands of World War II.
Right. By 1942, Bugs Bunny had completely eclipsed the older stars.
Like Porky Pig.
And he became the undeniable #1 star of the Merry Melodies cartoon series. This was a significant shift because Merry Melodies was initially created to feature one-shot characters, wasn't it?
It was. The Looney Tunes series was for established stars. Bugs basically broke the mold of his own series.
And by 1943, this success had elevated the entire studio.
Yes. The profitability of the Warner Bros. Cartoon studio surged during the war years, largely due to Bugs' success. It made them the most profitable cartoon studio in the United States by 1943.
And he started getting special billing.
Special star billing, a rarity for the time, which really demonstrated the studio's confidence in him as their flagship character.
So how did the national mood during World War II specifically translate into this explosion in Bugs' popularity?
The sources explain that Bugs' popularity just soared because his personality perfectly captured the desired American spirit of the time. His free and easy attitude, his unflappable confidence, and his ability to outwit much larger, seemingly more powerful adversaries.
It resonated.
It resonated deeply with a country facing a global conflict. He was the witty, resourceful, indomitable American spirit personified.
And the studio put that personality to direct propagandistic use.
Absolutely. The Warner Bros. Characters, like those at other studios, were pitted directly against Axis figures. Bugs confronted Adolf Hitler and Hermann Goering in the 1945 short Hair Meets Hair. This was a very common theme during the period, using comedy to deflate and ridicule the enemy.
That short also provides the origin of a gag that became a running theme throughout his career, his geographical disorientation.
Indeed. Hair Meets Hair introduces his well-known recurring reference to Albuquerque, New Mexico. In the short, Bugs is trying to find Las Vegas, Nevada, but he takes a wrong turn and mistakenly winds up in the Black Forest of Germany.
I knew I should have taken that left turn at Albuquerque.
That's the one. That confusion over geography, whether it's Albuquerque, Pismo Beach, or Peoria, became a signature element of his comedy, playing on the idea of the traveling city slicker who finds himself perpetually out of place.
On the darker side of wartime animation, though, he also appeared in some highly controversial shorts aimed at the Pacific conflict.
That is correct. He was featured in the 1944 short Bugs Bunny Nips the Nips, where he is pitted against Japanese soldiers. The sources confirm that this cartoon has been permanently pulled from distribution due to the extremely problematic and racist depictions of Japanese people.
It illustrates how closely linked wartime animation was to contemporary propaganda efforts.
Regardless of how regrettable those depictions are today, yes.
Beyond the cartoons themselves, Bugs became an official part of the war effort, even receiving actual military honors.
This is one of the most remarkable parts of his biography. Bugs appeared in U.S. war bonds commercials, like the film Any Bonds Today in 1942. More concretely, he served as the official mascot for the Kingman Army Airfield in Arizona from 1943 to 1946.
And this was an important base.
Critical for training thousands of aerial gunners, including famous future actors like Clark Gable and Charles Bronson, Bugs was literally plastered everywhere on the base as a morale booster.
And the honorary military rank is a fascinating detail. It shows that blurred line between character and cultural figure.
Well, in the 1943 short Super Rabbit, Bugs appears at the very end wearing a full U.S. Marine Corps dress blue uniform. As a result, and likely due to his significant morale-boosting role, the Marine Corps officially conferred upon Bugs Bunny the rank of Honorary Marine Master Sergeant.
That's incredible.
To go from an unnamed, goofy prototype in 1938 to an Honorary Master Sergeant in 1943 is an unbelievably rapid ascent in cultural significance.
While the character's attitude was set, his visual design continued to be subtly refined throughout this period, especially as the Looney Tunes series itself made a huge structural shift.
The structural shift was the permanent move to color. Bugs had appeared in color from his official debut in A Wild Hair onward, but the Looney Tunes series itself had historically been black and white.
So that series fully converted to color in 1944.
And Buckaroo Bugs was Bugs's first starring role within the Looney Tunes title, marking his full integration as the studio's top star.
And the design was refined once more by Robert McKimson.
McKimson, who was an animator in Bob Clampett's unit, made perhaps the most impactful visual adjustment after Gibbons. For Tortoise Wins by a Hair in 1943, McKimson gave Bugs more slanted, cynical eyes, slightly longer teeth, and a notably larger, more expressive mouth.
The more aggressive look.
It's a bit, yes. This look was initially unique to Clampett's unit, but it was so successful at conveying the rabbit's insolent personality that it was gradually adopted by the other major directors like Freeling and Frank Tashlin. It cemented the look of the Golden Age.
With the look, the voice, and the attitude fully established, the post-war Golden Age saw Bugs at his absolute peak, guided by the three masters of Warner Bros. Animation, Freeling, McKimson, and Chuck Jones.
That era saw Bugs star in over 167 theatrical shorts, concluding his initial run with False Hair in 1964. The creative genius was divided among those three key directors, each bringing a slightly different flavor to the character.
Let's give credit where it's due. Only one director secured an Oscar win specifically for a Bugs Bunny short.
That distinction belongs to Friz Freeling. His short Nighty Night Bugs from 1958, where Bugs plays a jester trading wits with Yosemite Sam and his fire-breathing but sickly dragon.
That one won the Academy Award for Best Cartoon Short Subject.
Freeling was a master of comedic timing and visual rhythm, and that short perfectly showcases his skill.
And Chuck Jones is responsible for some of the most influential long-standing character dynamics, particularly the defining rivalry with Daffy Duck.
Jones absolutely perfected that dynamic in the three-part Rabbit Season, Duck Season trilogy.
Rabbit Fire, Rabbit Seasoning, and Duck. Rabbit Duck.
Right, those films are just a masterclass in exploiting character weakness. Bugs is consistently the cool, unflappable manipulator, using simple rhetorical tricks to turn Elmer Fudd's rifle toward the hysterically self-preserving Daffy Duck. They cemented Bugs as the protagonist and Daffy as the easily exploited fool.
But Jones's genius wasn't just in gags. He elevated the medium itself with a short that is now preserved as a national treasure.
That would be What's Opera, Doc, from 1957. Jones decided to parody Richard Wagner's epic four-part opera cycle, Der Ring des Nibelungen,
and condense it into a 7-minute cartoon.
It features stunningly complex animation, beautiful art design, and it sets such a high bar for cultural sophistication in a theatrical cartoon short. It was selected for preservation in the National Film Registry in 1992.
The first cartoon short ever to receive that honor.
Yes, recognizing its historical and cultural significance, it proved that animation could be high art.
Whether it was the highbrow parody of Jones or the slapstick rhythm of Freelang, the character's consistent self-awareness shines through. This leads us back to his second defining phrase, which is an acknowledgement of his own unfair tactics.
Ain't I a stinker?
Right.
This phrase started popping up in shorts in the early 1940s, like in The Wacky Wabbit. It is Bugs' way of winking at the audience, acknowledging that yes, he is being completely unreasonable, manipulative, and maybe even cool.
But he's having such a good time doing it that we should enjoy it too.
Exactly. It's the ultimate expression of the trickster persona, where the trickster not only succeeds but celebrates his own success right in front of the victim.
And it was most famously, and perhaps most brutally, exhibited in the 1953 short Duck Amok.
Oh, absolutely. In that film, Daffy Duck is just systematically tormented by an unseen, malicious cartoonist who changes the scenery, the sound, even the laws of physics around him.
And in the final seconds,
the cartoonist is revealed to be Bugs Bunny, who delivers that iconic line. It confirms Bugs' role as not just a participant in the action, but as the omnipotent god of his own world.
that meta-awareness was wonderfully summarized by director Bob Clampett when he tried to define the Bugs Bunny persona from the character's point of view.
Clampett's description just encapsulates the character's philosophy entirely. He wrote, in the voice of Bugs, "Some people call me cocky and brash, but actually I'm just self-assured. I'm nonchalant, imperturbable, contemplative. I play it cool."
And the kicker.
The point that matters most is when he says, "And above all, I'm a very aware character. I'm well aware that I am appearing in an animated cartoon. I've read the script, and I already know how it turns out."
That explains everything.
It explains his invincibility and his perfect control. He is never surprised because he knows the fundamental rules of the universe he inhabits.
And that deep understanding of his own medium is precisely why he was able to survive the end of the theatrical short era in 1964 and transition so flawlessly into television and feature films. Let's move now into part 4, Legacy, Crossovers, and the 21st Century Revival, exploring how that self-assuredness played out on the global stage.
Bugs Bunny is much more than a cartoon character. He is a corporate identity. He is the official, recognized mascot for Warner Bros. And nearly all of its various divisions.
A position that's perfectly analogous to the role Mickey Mouse plays for Disney.
Exactly. And this status is reflected in his staggering list of professional records.
The sources confirm those records place him among the giants of cinematic history, regardless of the medium.
According to Guinness World Records, Bugs has appeared in more films, including shorts, feature-length, and compilations, than any other cartoon character in history.
That's amazing.
Furthermore, he's cited as the 9th most portrayed film personality worldwide, which is an incredible feat considering the competition. The industry itself recognized this longevity when he received a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame on December 10, 1985.
He was only the second cartoon character to get one.
After Mickey Mouse, yes.
But the highest praise may have been reserved for him in the early 2000s when he was ranked above all other animated figures.
In 2002, TV Guide ranked Bugs Bunny as the #1 greatest cartoon character of all time. The editor's rationale was that Bugs' stock has never gone down, citing his perfect distillation of the smart aleck American comic.
So he never felt dated.
The analysis confirmed that he was perfectly written, drawn beautifully, and possessed this enduring quality that made him universally beloved across generations.
His legacy is, of course, inextricably linked to the vocal talent that brought him to life. We have to revisit the remarkable achievement of Mel Blanc's 52-year tenure.
It's truly a historic achievement. Blanc voiced Bugs Bunny from the character's 1938 prototype debut all the way until Blanc's death in 1989.
And that voice became fundamental to the character.
Completely. The combination of the Bronx and Brooklyn accents became so fundamental that, unlike many other cartoon voices, it became impossible to separate the character from that specific vocal cadence and tone.
And the challenge of replacing Blanc, the man of 1,000 voices, meant that the studio had to rely on a whole stable of extremely talented actors to try and fill that void.
The succession challenge has been ongoing since 1989. Jeff Bergman has been the primary successor in many major productions, but the list of talented actors who have taken on the role includes Greg Burson, Billy West, Joe Lasky, and the current prolific voice, Eric Bauza.
who also voices Daffy and Tweety.
Right. The studio is constantly searching for that perfect vocal echo of Blanc.
The sources even provide a fascinating anecdote about a recent attempt to blend multiple talents using digital means to achieve that vocal perfection.
This was just recently for a 2025 Warner Bros. Studio Tour Hollywood commercial. The studio hired both Jeff Bergman and the current voice, Eric Bauza, and had them alternate every single word of the dialogue.
Wow.
And the resulting track was then run through a digital Mel Blanc filter in this technologically complex effort to create a synthesized composite that perfectly captured the nuance and timing of the original artist.
That just highlights the immense reverence and difficulty associated with replicating Blanc's voice.
It really does.
Bugs's enduring relevance often relies on his ability to cross over into live-action filmmaking. The first major step in that direction provides one of the most remarkable legal anecdotes in the sources.
That was the 1988 film Who Framed Roger Rabbit, which was one of Mel Blanc's final productions.
Right, a Disney-Amblin collaboration.
So Disney's characters were naturally featured heavily. However, Warner Bros. Placed a non-negotiable contractual demand regarding Bugs Bunny's cameo.
What was the demand?
He would only be allowed to appear if he received an equal amount of screen time as Disney's biggest star, Mickey Mouse.
Which is why they always appear together in their scenes.
Always. Guaranteeing contractual parity between the two animation titans.
The required parity just speaks volumes about Bugs's value as intellectual property. And this set the stage for the hybrid feature film era that defined his 1990s comeback.
That started with Space Jam in 1996, collaborating with basketball legend Michael Jordan. The film was a huge box office success, grossing over $230 million worldwide.
And it introduced Lola Bunny.
A very important introduction. The sequel, Space Jam. A new legacy in 2021 starred LeBron James. But it's worth noting that the 2003 film Looney Tunes, Back in Action, was a box office bomb, despite actually receiving more positive critical reviews than the Space Jam movies.
It just shows the volatile nature of these hybrid projects.
Absolutely.
His journey to stay fresh for new audiences has also required significant shifts on television. The Looney Tunes show in 2011 made some genuinely risky choices regarding his core personality and look.
The 2011 show was a radical departure. Visually, Bugs was given a new design, including a significant change to his fur color. Initially, he was colored a shade of mauve. Mauve. Though they did revert him back to gray in the second season. But the personality shift was even more dramatic. Bugs and Daffy were portrayed as best friends and roommates, completely abandoning their classic rivalry.
And Bugs was often characterized as vocally exasperated by Daffy's foolishness.
A major deviation from his typical cool, non-reactive demeanor. He shared a suburban house with Daffy, plus Taz, who was treated like a pet dog, and Speedy Gonzales.
And his love interest, Lola Bunny, was also significantly rewritten for that show, which placed Bugs in a rare position of discomfort.
Lola Bunny in the Looney Tunes show was portrayed as hyper-energetic, overwhelmingly talkative, and a bit crazy. She was an almost manic foil for Bugs. He dated her, but he often found her antics exhausting, rather than being the usual smooth operator in the relationship.
It was a conscious effort to make Bugs react to the world rather than just controlling it.
Exactly.
The most recent major television incarnation, however, appears to be a deliberate retreat to the Golden Age aesthetic, maybe as a response to the mixed reception of those 2011 changes.
The Looney Tunes cartoon series, which debuted on HBO Max in 2020, intentionally features a design closer to the Bob Clampett era, specifically the rabbit with the yellow gloves.
And the personality.
The writers aimed for a combined personality that reflected the best of the Golden Age. Freelang's precision trickery, Clampett's anarchic defiance, and Jones's philosophical resilience. The goal was to maintain that confident, insolent, smooth-talking demeanor.
It demonstrates that his original core identity remains the most potent.
It seems so.
Finally, we should look at his enormous commercial and legal legacy, which spans everything from apparel to postal recognition.
Commercially, he is a superstar. He has been a pitchman for everything from Kool-Aid to Nike. His early collaborations with Michael Jordan created the Hair Jordan campaign, which was on the Air Jordan the 7th and 8th sneakers, and was a direct precursor to the entire Space Jam concept.
But his most notable non-film recognition came in 1997.
The U.S. postage stamp.
Right.
Bugs Bunny appeared on a U.S. postage stamp that year, a landmark achievement because he was the very first cartoon character to be so honored. He even beat Mickey Mouse to the distinction.
And this was controversial at the time.
It was. Critics viewed it as an unnecessary step toward the commercialization of stamp art, but it cemented Bugs' status as an undeniable American institution.
And as a historical character who has lived through 80 years of animation, the sources provided a crucial note on his eventual copyright status.
Yes, this is highly relevant to his 1930s origins. Under current U.S. copyright law, because of the different stages of his development, the various versions of Bugs Bunny will enter the public domain at different times.
So the prototype goes first.
The 1938 prototype, the original unnamed rabbit from Porky's Hare Hunt, is scheduled to enter the U.S. public domain around 2034. However, the fully defined official 1940 character, the one who first said, "What's up, Doc?" is scheduled to enter the public domain a bit later, around 2036.
That difference speaks volumes about the iterative nature of his creation.
It really does.
So as we synthesize all this information from these sources, what ultimately is the key insight into Bugs Bunny's enduring identity?
The central insight, I think, is his unique nonlinear development. He was not a sudden creation. He was forged and refined across 4 distinct directorial visions, adapting from a chaotic buffoon to a silent magician, and finally into the self-assured city slicker we know.
And his success during World War II.
It proved he was the perfect embodiment of resourceful American confidence. His longevity is just rooted in his resilience and his fundamental awareness, that knowledge that he understands the script better than anyone else. It ensures his trickster persona remains constantly adaptable and perpetually victorious across every decade and medium.
That adaptability and resilience really are the keys to his enduring charm. So given that Bugs Bunny's success stemmed not from a single fixed vision, but from combining multiple creative concepts and constantly adapting from that early rural buffoon prototype to the ultimate city slicker, what elements of his personality, the unflappable nonchalance, the absolute self-assurance, or that unique ability to break the fourth wall and acknowledge the cartoon itself are most responsible for cementing his position as the #1 cartoon character of all time? That's something for you to consider as you reflect on his long, winding road to stardom.
A truly profound observation based on the historical context.
Thanks for listening.